to make an awesome craft foam armored cuff. Just because it makes it easier. Taking my first piece. Exactly where that makes that shape. There's no exact measurement. The tricky part is when you don't do an exact measurement and you go to match up the second cuff. So usually I recommend when you're working on one of these cuffs that you work on them at the same time. So aka I'm gluing down pieces here and then I'd glue down the next piece all on the other cuff. And I'm going to take my extra detail layer that I provided you guys earlier. And I'm going to come through, add that in there. So again, once that's bent, that's how that's gonna look, which I think is kind of cool looking. Next piece. And since we did decide earlier that we were gonna kind of like, you know, touch them up against each other. Oh yeah, like this, where it was the bottom edge of these pieces is kind of overlapping there. Even though now that they're spiked up like that, ooh, you can bring them down more. This is why playing with your cuff and playing around with the design is actually a really fun process, because you just don't know what you're gonna end up with, because you might change your mind the entire time, and that's okay. So again, I have to eyeball on this piece because my line here wasn't really obviously centered, so eyeballing the actual shape and trying to ignore the line. I'm in that like exact in-between stage where you almost need another stick, but not quite, but of course you're gonna need it right when you're already in the middle of something, and it's gonna make it really difficult. Be leery of that, it does happen. So again, how it's looking, and imagine it bent. Third piece. So again, this is another great reason why I always give myself extra pieces, because obviously if I hadn't, I'd be like, oh man, now I'm a little short because of how I decided to change it. So good thing I gave myself 4 spiky cutouts, so at least now you guys know if you do want to do it exactly like me, you need 4 spiky cutouts. Very spiky. Kind of a little bat cuffy. So I guess if you're gonna be Batman and you want some arm spikes, just template my work for you. Just don't do the scrolls. Now I'm gonna come back through, use my same burn tool, and I'm going to continue that same kind of scroll line pattern up through the center of these. So again, just gives it a little bit more detail and kind of blends it in with what it's going to have over on the sides. Now that we have that, it's kind of time to stabilize our work, if you will. So, using the same shape from the base of our arm cuff, and if you still have the plastic template from earlier, I'm creating a secondary layer. And that's just so when it has all that pressure, you know, from your arm, it doesn't just rip the foam. So I am going to take my secondary layer and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to hot glue that to the base layer. My edges are now feeling good. And so at this point, if you are sure that everything is kind of good, it's how you want it, stress test is going well. Now do remember, yes, it is 2mm craft foam, so you can indeed rip it if you tear at it. By all means, you're going to rip it. The same thing I just did here with the double kind of reinforcing the base layer. If you had wanted to, you could have done your spikes the same way where it's double layered. Since this is a tutorial for me to teach you the methods of how to get your cuff to look like this, I did not put more craft foam into it than I really needed to get the look. But for durability factors, I probably would double layer all my thin foam pieces because again, it is only 2mm thick craft foam. Now this is perfect if you're just doing a photo shoot. By all means, if your character is just going in photos and it's not going to be at a big convention, this is fine. But if you are planning on a whole bunch of people hugging you at a Comic-Con, double your layers. But again, you have all the templates. It's really easy to make more and slap them on together. Just hot glue them together and do the same cut and fold, technique, and you will come out with this. So at this point, we are actually ready to go ahead and do the buckles. Now there are several ways that you can attach your armor. I know some people prefer D-rings and ribbon. Other people have like some weird clip snap things. I like cheap plastic parachute buckles. So taking our scrap pieces and kind of looking at our buckles, we're going to want to make pieces that are about 1/2 inch thick. We're going to go ahead and draw our baseline. Oh, and we'll probably make them about, my ball in here, about 2 inches long should be good. So 2 inches long, 1/2 inch thick. For this, I am cutting on the outer edges just because 1/2 inch was, a little less wide than the buckle itself. You can cut on the inside though, it won't matter too much because you're going to put so much hot glue in there to make it sturdier. Buckle 2, buckle 3, buckle. Now this is only for one cuff, so obviously double it when you come over to your other side. Now the trick to these buckles that I have found, this is my personal opinion and everybody does it their own way, is I loop it through and kind of get it ready to be folded in half. So like that. So like as you can see, it's going to be a pretty short tab. But I'm going to kind of push the buckle back up. I'm gonna get my handy dandy hot glue gun, and I'm gonna kind of push that hot glue down into it so that when I pull this through here, it kind of adds the strength of the hot glue to the foam on the top part as well. So I'm gonna push that through. Let that cool off for a second. Once it does, you can pull this piece right open. And completely saturate it with hot glue. Because again, in this case, the hot glue is kind of what's adding your tensile strength to the material, because otherwise if you were to just put pressure on 2mm thick foam, it would rip. So you absolutely want it coated in hot glue. And even still, we're going to reinforce it a little bit more when we put it on there. Now if these do break for whatever reason, say you missed some glue, don't worry about it. It's actually pretty easy to come back through and fix. I do like to do that little bit of a stress test before I actually, put them on the detailed piece, so that cuff itself, just because once you've got them like thoroughly hot glued on there, it's a lot harder to pull them off. So again, kind of jam that glue up in there. Make sure it's really good on the bend before you go through and fill the rest of it, just so that it adds that tensile strength. So when your glue spills over on the edges, depending on how hot your glue is, give it a second, and I really just mean like just give it a little bit, unless you just really like hot glue for whatever reason. So as soon as you give it a second, come back through, wipe it off, and what I found works best for hot glue on your fingers is really quickly just rubbing them together, because it gets it off your skin pretty fast and cools it down. So you will not get burnt as bad if you just roll it right off of you, because otherwise that can get pretty uncomfortable if you just let it bubble. So I wrap my pieces around, and carefully, especially because these are only 2mm thick and I've got a whole bunch of them, I'm going to look, and I'm going to determine, based on how that is, I'm going to determine exactly how my buckle is going to go, as far as like at what point in the buckle do I want to be center. I'm going to line up this edge here with the center of the pieces. So I actually break that back apart. Oops. And I throw it on the floor. No. So I know that on one side I need to line up this lip right here, and on the other side I need to line up this edge right here. So I'm going to lay it back flat, and about a finger's width apart from the base. So lay down my finger, put it there, is where I'm going to put my first one. If you want to, you can take your Sharpie and mark it. If you can find your Sharpie, and you can kind of mark it. Not while you have the hot glue gun in your hand. And then again, same thing over here. Take your other end, about a finger's width apart. You usually try to use the same finger. And you can kind of visually see as well where that's going to line up to be. And it's okay if this step is not perfect. Worst comes to worst, you show a centimeter to skin. If it really bothers you, you can put a flap underneath that you tuck under the other side, and that will even it out and make it solid. So I'm going to take hot glue, and I'm going to completely fill that in there, and all up on that. And then we're just going to lay it back down inside of our lines. So again, filling this gap up here and all over our foam. And now it's a lot of hot glue, but you want it as sturdy as possible. I'm pressing that down. Now we're going to take our top ones and do the same thing where it's the finger space apart from the top. And yes, this is a good order to do them in. And I do like to make sure I've got the same halves on each side. So, you know, if your buckle piece is over here and your male end is over here and your female end's over here, keep them on the same sides the whole time. I don't like flipping it. I don't know why, personal preference. You guys can do what you want. My recommendation, same sides. The Sharpie again just makes it really easy when you're, you know, you just got the hot glue and you're trying to very quickly set it, that you're not trying to lay your finger down while at the same time that you're trying to lay the hot glued piece down. Alright, now to do the center, you literally find center. So if you want to actually measure it, if you just want to eyeball it, just have some kind of method to where they're around about the same size or same distance apart on both. So as you can see, eyeballing it works pretty well. I mean, that's close enough that those pieces are going to go together. But if you really want to get particular, then get any kind of ruler. Doesn't matter. You know, the grid on here, your tape here, doesn't matter. The secret squirrel method of making them a little bit sturdier is to come back through and add hot glue around the outside edges. Kind of make it as neat as you can because it will be obviously visible. And only come up to the buckle part right there. And then once you have gone around the outside edges, come back on the top and add it in right here. Just go back through and very lightly dust through them until you see this kind of like protective layer of hot glue over your foam. And again, that's what's gonna keep it from like ripping in half. Now you might, because now you're putting all the pressure back onto this foam, you might get a little bit of a tear in that during the bend. But if you do, just go back through a little more hot foam or hot glue. And now from here, you can coat it in Plasti Dip, which is a great product that coats the foam and kind of seals it and keeps it from cracking. I've tried Flex Seal, that's terrible. I've tried wood glue and that doesn't provide you much flex, so if you needed to store it, it wouldn't be very good. But I do love my Plasti Dip. The other things you can use is any kind of Mod Podge to seal it, or you can go back through with a heat gun and heat over it, and that will also seal it. So there are a couple ways that you can go through and finish this. And then obviously a very great paint job where you do multi-tones and, you know, like maybe add like a little bit of silver on the edge of the blades and things like that would really make this type of cuff pop. And of course, once you're done, you're gonna wanna go ahead and throw it on. All right, so as you guys can see, this is my final cuff. And there's my Rarfig, and this is just so fun, so detailed, and you could even come back through, add more detailed pieces up here, some trim pieces. I mean, go crazy with it. Whatever you guys can think to do to it, go for it. Add the decorations. This is just a basic pattern to really show you guys what you potentially can do with it. But again, I thank you guys for watching. I hope you will like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. If you do want to see the painting tutorial, definitely comment below. Let me know, message me, whichever, and say, hey, paint it for us, demonstrate, and show us the other one, because I haven't obviously made its pair yet. But if you want to see them when they're both done and you want to see them painted, just let me know. I'll be sure to get that tutorial for you. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.